Hi everybody, I just wanted to make a quick video here to talk about Ohm's Law and voltmeters and how to use them. I know some people have been having some trouble with electude. I know some of this stuff is really difficult. There's a lot of new vocabulary, but I appreciate you guys that are working hard to try to figure things out. Remember, you can always um, Google things, use YouTube to look up additional information, and then a great idea is to put specific questions about even a specific question within Electude or a specific module inside that Google Classroom so everyone can see your question and then see my answer, or other students might want to answer your question as well. So let's jump into Ohm's Law here. Um, this module is really hands-on and just wants you to kind of see what happens to electricity as we change a few things. So it's got a few of these sliders. You're always looking for little sliders or things like this that you can adjust. That's kind of why I like Electude. You can see how things change. So if we look over here, when I change the voltage, the greater I make it, you can see there's more and more current flowing. Okay, so the higher the voltage, the higher the current. That's kind of all they're looking for you to see. Um, it's also going to talk about resistance. And resistance, as we increase the resistance, you can see there's less and less current. So as resistance increases, we get less and less current. I like to think of resistance as like rocks, big boulders, or logs in a river. The more big boulders and logs and stuff that are in the river, the less water can flow through, right? So the same idea with electricity. The more resistance there is, the less current we're going to have. So as you go through this, you should be able to play with these things. I'm not necessarily worried about you getting the right answers. I want you guys to start to see the relationships between these big electrical ideas, voltage, current, and resistance. Those are really big things. It's really important that you guys understand those things. So go ahead and answer those questions as you go through. I hope you guys get through this without too much trouble. And again, if you're having issues, Google those things, look up YouTube videos. There's a lot of great information out there for you. And then I wanted to look just really quick at the voltmeter module. This is actually called a multimeter. Well, there are things that are just voltmeters, but we typically use a multimeter, and this one is a multimeter. This looks exactly like the ones we would be using hands-on in class if we weren't home. And so it works exactly the same way. So whenever we're using this thing, we notice the dial indicator. There are a bunch of different options. These are the symbols you need to remember. V is for voltage. This Greek letter ohm, this funny little letter over here, is the symbol for resistance. And then down here, the big A is the symbol for current. So whenever we want to measure voltage, we need to change our slider around to measure the appropriate voltage, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in just one second. When we're looking over here, this is called a schematic. So this is a drawn out schematic of what the circuit would look like. So there's schematics for every electrical circuit anywhere. And we're just looking at the actual schematic to test it. We're pretending like this is a real circuit. So we're pretending like we're actually touching our two different probes to different places where wires connect, like in a car. So let's take let's figure out how to do this. So we can pick these are called probes, and we can pick these probes up. If we read through this, it says to connect the black probe to the negative terminal of the battery. So if we go over here, this is the schematic. This is the symbol over here in the corner for a battery. Okay, there's two little lines coming together. So we're going to take our black probe and we're going to connect it to the smaller side of the battery, or the negative side of the battery. Then we're going to take our red probe and put it on the other side of the battery. So whenever we measure voltage, we always have to measure 2 points. And then what we're going to do is we're going to adjust our knob here. I go over to 2 and it's not reading anything. Okay, that makes me think it's selection 2 on the knob means we're reading voltages that are 2 or less. So if we have greater than 2 volts, we won't be able to see any voltage there. So if I bump it up again, oh, all of a sudden it says 12 volts. Okay, so I can see that I'm measuring 12 volts. I'll check that. Yep, correct. The battery is a 12 volt battery. Okay, which is the battery in your car is a 12 volt battery. So as we go through this, it's going to ask us to measure different voltages in different places. And let's see, across resistor 1. So if we go over here, we find R1, that's resistor 1. And the same thing, we're just going to place our probes on either side of it and then check the voltage. Oh, this is incorrect, so we must have put the probe in the wrong spot. So let's move this back down to the negative side of the battery terminal. It wants us to keep our black probe on the negative side of the battery terminal, which is good practice, is what we would do in real life, is keep that black probe on the ground side of the battery, okay, the black side of the battery. So it likes that. Funny enough, this should give us the same value. Okay, it shouldn't matter if our probe is here or here, but it wants us to keep that going. And if you read through it, it asks us to keep the black probe on the negative terminal of the battery. So that's what we're going to do. So as you go through this, you're just measuring by moving these probes around to the different little blue boxes, and they'll click into place. And then you can adjust your knob here, your slider, or your rotary dial, to see what the voltage is. So if you're measuring voltage, you're always going to be in this V area, and if you're not seeing anything, you need to go up until you see something. So now we're measuring 20 volts or less, and we can see that there's 12 volts in the circuit there. So it does take a little bit of time to get used to measuring with this. The nice thing is doing this online, this thing reads a nice solid number. In real life, it can be hard to get those to make good connections with the probes, and you can see the number jumping all over the place. So this is a good way to practice using the multimeter. Hopefully I answered most of your questions as far as these modules. Please take your time and always start by reading this information on the right side. There's a lot of really good information. You might have to slow down and read it a couple of times for it to make sense. And it's okay if you're struggling with these things. I want you to be struggling with them. These are big new concepts, so it's going to take a little bit of time to get through. I've lessened how many modules I'm requiring you to get through. I hope you guys aren't feeling too overwhelmed. Please write any specific questions you might have within the underneath each assignment, and then I'll get to those and answer those as soon as I can. Thanks, guys. Take it easy.